friends. This is Jesse Juarez, president of the Rotary Club of sunny Seaside, California. You're watching a presentation which was recorded live at one of our club meetings. Seaside Rotary meets twice a month via Zoom. Our meetings feature dynamic presentations by many of the movers and shakers that make Monterey County such a vibrant and hardworking community. If you'd like to join a meeting or learn more about Rotary and the work that we do, you can reach out to Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. Again, that's Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more dynamic content. Once again, give the floor to Lisa to introduce our esteemed guest speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lisa Tani with Seaside Rotary, and I have the honor of introducing Patrick Orosco today. And he is I apologize, I don't know his title, but very involved with the Orosco Group. Many, and David and Mose are on our call. They should probably be introducing Patrick. I think they have stories, and he was a previous Seaside Rotarian as well. So we welcome him back to the club and look forward to his speaking today. I'll just share a little bit. I did find a LinkedIn update with the Orosco Group. They've done so many developments in our area throughout the time. His father, Don, passed away in 2020, but he was quoted, I believe it was in the Herald, as well as the Carmel magazine, that he did developments so he could really do the joy of his life, which was motorsports. So he was very involved in that. But they've done developments in Seaside. They've done down on Broadway and Fremont, where Grocery Outlet is. That development was done, I believe. They've done development in Ryan Ranch. They've got a current one in Sand City. So they're just really involved in our community. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Patrick, and he can correct me if I misstated anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's nice to be back, see some familiar faces, Mose and David. Yeah, so a little bit about myself and the company. I've been, I think I joined Seaside Rotary in, must have been 98. I was there for 3 years. I think at the time I was the youngest Rotarian in the peninsula. I was 21. So had a lot of fun with that. And as the story goes, I had perfect attendance and I missed a meeting and I never came back. I was afraid of the fines. But we had a good run at 3 years. So the last, since I've seen y'all, we've been very, very busy. Gosh, it's probably been now a couple decades, but my brother and I are now, co-managing partners of the company. My role is generally marketing, new deal procurement, leasing, transactions, and Chris's role is more related to the financial side of things, lender relations and banking and underwriting and that kind of thing. So we've got a good right and left side of the brain thing going. The company has evolved quite a bit in the last many years. When I was a Rotarian, we were doing exclusively ground up development in retail only. So my dad's history was that he started when he was in his mid to late 30s in commercial brokerage. That transitioned into a lot of neighborhood shopping center development for Save Mart supermarkets and Payless drugs in the Central Valley. We moved over in 90 to build the Target Center. And that was kind of the heyday of our power center development. We ultimately, biggest project we built was about 1.2 million square feet on 120 acres, pretty good sized development also in the Central Valley. And then 2008, after finishing the Edgewater Center, finishing Cost Plus, and then Seaside City Center, we were in the midst of that. 2008 struck and we pivoted. We realized that we could essentially use our approach to development to fix things rather than build things. And our business is pretty aptly described as basically stabilizing commercial real estate. We've done a little bit of multifamily since, but when I say stabilizing, that basically tends to mean something that is at the end of its economic lifespan and in need of a new tenant or new concept. My first deal that I did, independent of my dad, was the former Borders Books, and that building, after Borders bankruptcy, went to auction. We were successful in buying it out of auction with a fairly complex transaction, and then split it up into the three tenants that were there for a minute. Panera Bread used to be a tenant called Tilly's, which is basically a surfing apparel, surf and skate apparel, and then Ulta. Subsequent to that, we picked up the former Sand City Design Center. That was half built. It was a mixed-use building with condos on the top 2 stories, and then office on the second story. As a 4-story building. And then the bottom floor was intended to be a design showcase for a galleria that was conceived when the housing boom was occurring in the mid-2000s. We repositioned that project as an apartment building with a token ground floor commercial component that has been a challenge to lease. And essentially, through that project, started to diversify into a little bit of everything. Since that point in time, that was our first mixed use project, our first residential project. Since that point in time, we've done office, R&D, industrial, mini storage. We built a little repositioned coastal storage thing across from City Hall in Sand City. We've done multifamily housing development. We've done land development. We've done hospitality. I've opened a restaurant. It's been a dynamic couple of years. And the take home in all of that is when someone tells you don't open a restaurant, listen to them. Whatever, that was the guidance that I constantly had as a young professional is whatever you do, just don't open a restaurant. And so, I kind of had to scratch that itch. And unfortunately that was last summer or summer of 19 that I decided to open. So that kind of answered itself. But, the theme here across the developments and projects that we've undertaken really is just an entrepreneurial approach to real estate investment. We have developed such a strong understanding of the opportunity set here on the peninsula that, driving by vacant parcels or buildings that need attention, you end up asking yourself, why isn't that working, and what can I do to fix it? And what happens when 2008 comes back and everything goes on sale? And that entrepreneurial approach to real estate investment is really what differentiates our company from our peers. And it's not only based in kind of a geographic understanding that's now second generation. We've been here for 31 years as a family. It's also relationship based. And so what I now at 44 am finding is that not unlike seeing some familiar faces here, I'm running into some folks that I'd worked with in the past, and benefiting from having established, some credibility and trust with them. Examples would be, Ray Corpus, who left the city of Salinas or Seaside, went to Salinas. Through him, poked around over there and found a couple opportunities that we're now pursuing. But it's a, very dynamic, fun little niche to specialize in here on the peninsula. Very much reliant upon patience, degree of dexterity, and then a big controlling factor, at least on this side of the Salinas Valley, has been a complex understanding of water rights. That's really been one thing that has been a defining role in our success there in Sand City initially, and then transitioning into Seaside, which has been very, very successful. The most recent project that we developed was actually what's called a land development deal, which effectively means that we got all of the conceived a project, got all the entitlements put together, and then recognized that the value that we add in finishing a project in terms of the construction essentially had diminishing returns on our time, and someone else could just as effectively finish it as we could. And so we brought in a partner of sorts, and that's the Ascent project. There's a 106 unit affordable housing and market rate housing project next to the post office on Upper Broadway. Dave, thanks for your support on that. We're excited to see that get going there. That was a site that, consistent with the approach we take, we started on one path thinking it was going to be a solution for the county offices that were in need of a new home, having been displaced from Olympia Plaza, and ended up realizing that it was a fabulous infill residential development. The same is true for the project that my dad entitled between just south of Tioga Avenue across from Costco. That he assembled 10 acres there, and initially planned to build a Lowe's home improvement center. Years later, that will also host 356 units of housing, including some for sale housing and for rent housing, and actually a hotel that started as 2 hotels with about 216 rooms. So that'll be a fun project, to see break ground relatively soon, concurrent with the Ascent project. So that's a little, I share, unfortunately, I've inherited my dad's ability to talk to a tree, and without any feedback or acknowledgement, sign of life. And so if you let me, I will talk for the next 2 or 3 hours nonstop. But would love to answer any questions y'all might have about our experience in the peninsula, or strategy, or anything that you care to
Much
add.
appreciated, Patrick. Looking at the chat box window here, it looks like.
Oh, there we go. I see it. Okay, just opened it up. How has COVID impacted the company in projects? The great question. Because we did so well in the last recession, taking advantage of basically a discount on assets, because we were able to essentially buy buildings that were effectively mostly complete but vacant. We've been waiting for the recession eagerly for more than a decade, and it's taken a long time, much longer than expected. So when COVID hit, it was man all the battle stations, and what we ended up doing was basically freeing up as much cash as possible towards the goal of taking advantage of some acquisition opportunities. That was the principal driver in us taking survey of where we were at in the Ascent project and saying, okay, the project is fully entitled, fully designed, water's in place. How important is it that we're the folks that hire the contractor to build it? We even had bids from the contractor that's ultimately going to build it. So we ended up selling it to the end user, who essentially tends to be the party that takes us out of projects. Normally, our customer at the tail end of this is a passive investor that will buy a building or series of buildings based on the income stream that those buildings generate over a relatively certain period of time. And they'll buy those buildings based on a set rate of return, and the rate of return is what determines the purchase price. So in that case, the investor was also a developer, but they had a equity partner. In the case of the buyer of Ascent, it was the founder of Guess Jeans, of all things, and they were hooked up with them and trying to essentially place the family's money, and so we were able to sell that project. Now the recession didn't really happen. A lot of people were impacted from a work perspective, but globally, there was a blip, but the stock market has held up, and it's been interesting to see how it's weathered now, even a transition in leadership at the federal level. So maybe we avoid it. I don't know, but certainly it's been drawn out quite a bit. Next question, are your projects based in California or other places too? Another great question. Up until the recession, we only did projects in California. My dad's mantra was, if he couldn't get to it with a 2.5 hour drive in the car, he didn't want to be a part of it. And that was based in the idea that he wanted to focus on eye-to-eye contact, and build relationships with individuals, and have a role in the details of the project. That's remains one of our differentiating factors, is that the principals, myself, my brother, are intimately involved in every deal, versus having a cast of employees that handle everything for us. That said, one of the things that we ended up doing as we figured out how to buy distressed retail was we ended up participating in bankruptcy auctions and started to buy portfolios of buildings. So the Starbucks on Del Monte that used to be on the roller rink, that was part of a 72 store portfolio that we participated in an acquisition with a big hedge fund out of LA. That took us into Nevada and Arizona. And then subsequent to that, we did a project directly with Staples, recognizing that Staples was shrinking their footprint as they did in Seaside, where Smart and Final was able to expand into their store. And through that, went into 12 other states. So, our focus, it tends to still be in California right now. We have one projects in Florida, and I think that's it as far as out-of-state stuff. But we'll essentially chase opportunities if we can find something that's somewhat formulaic in terms of a standardized problem to solve across multiple geographies. Next question: what are some factors potential developers often miss when considering development project? A lot of developers specialize in one thing. Office guys tend to focus on office projects. Residential guys tend to seek out residential opportunities. Industrial guys, they kind of stay in their lane. And locally, an example would be the McGraw-Hill building up on, by the airport. That building is occupied by, I don't think actually McGraw-Hill has any employees there now. I think they've completely moved out, but that's a white elephant of a commercial real estate building. It's massive. It was set up to serve a single tenant, and so it's very difficult to break up. But that's a type of project that we look at, and we've looked at underwriting it for residential, which ended up being prohibited because it's in the flight path. We've underwritten it to do an industrial project wherein we'd remove a floor plate and open up roll-up doors across the backside of it. We looked at even relocating Naval Postgraduate School, big component of that. And so dexterity is one of the things that a lot of developers don't tend to have, but is something that we have incorporated really by necessity, because we continue to farm a relatively small geography here in the peninsula. Are you still involved in racing? Yes, but they're two little short legs, and they tend to be at a very high octave. My daughter is 3. She can stop my 4.5-year-old son in his tracks. He just drops to, she'll shriek, and he just drops to his feet like he's been hit with a stun gun. So my racing has matriculated into more important things like chasing children around. I do fancy getting back into a race car at some point soon, but we've been so consumed with family matters and keeping our nose down to make hay while we can professionally, that my racing plans are really, not in the foreseeable future, unfortunately. Let's see. After you left Rotary, we'd work hard to replace your income stream. I do remember when your dad contacted our president and he asked you to be fined $275.
So that sounds like a bit of history there.
Yeah. No, that sounds like my dad. Yeah. But let's see. What do you enjoy most about work as a developer? Honestly, what I enjoy most about my work as a developer, truth be told, is just the creativity. When you think of creativity, you think of, painting or singing or, design, something that's kind of arts based. But the thing I love about real estate development is that it is a very dynamic, often amorphous problem. So, you walk in a situation and the first thing you have to do is figure out what the actual problem is. What am I trying to solve for? What is the challenge here? It's almost never literal or linear. And so I've often described how I look at problems as a cloud. And within the cloud, there are points that connect, but it's hard to see them at first. And so you kind of got to wade into it in order to sort through all the different options and string those lines up together. And my brother comes in and he takes the string that's going from point to point and he pulls it straight. And that's the path forward. And so he's the one that helps to put things in a box, and I'm the one that helps to find creative solutions that are oftentimes in kind of unnavigated territory. So that's really fulfilling. I work with fantastic people every day. The workplace is very, very rigorous and sometimes stressful, but I also absolutely love the fact that I am able to continue to work very close to home, see my kids at a reasonable hour, and build on opportunities and relationships and a skill set incrementally because of our focus on the Monterey Peninsula. It's been fun to see things evolve and kind of come out of the ground. Another question here. if you could build anything, cost to no object, and water aplenty, what would it be or look like? Well, let me think about that for a second. It might be a go-kart track. When I was, very altruistic and didn't really understand all of the factors at play, that there was a point at which we were looking at the main gates to build an event center and opera house. I actually had an opera company that was looking for a home, and I was privately trying to woo them to this, fantastic spot of California. Now, that was in my early 20s. And so, reality is set home. But kidding aside, it was somewhat connected to the restaurant that I opened. My goal as a kid really was to take a skill set in commercial development and get into hospitality. I wanted to build the boutique hotels, and that was in part because I really enjoyed curating experiences for people that were high touch, high emotion. And a couple of years ago, we put together some semblance of that in the independent marketplace that lasted for 18 sessions there in the basement or on the first floor of the independent there in downtown Sand City, which was effectively a kind of maker fair with restaurants and entertainment. And that confirmed that I had a genuine interest in hospitality and F&B. And so I actually acquired a couple properties in Big Sur where I was living. We bought what used to be called the Village Shops next to River Inn. And in the summer of 19, decided to open a yoga studio, a restaurant, a retail store, and we got pretty darn close to opening an event space all at once. Made absolutely no sense in the world, but it was fun. And so the goal in that undertaking was to see if I had the staying power to eventually get into hospitality and find a property to build a hotel, which we may end up pursuing on the second property that we own down in Big Sur. It's one of very few commercially zoned properties. Just gorgeous site next to Sanderson, between Ripplewood Resort, Glen Oaks, and Fernwood, along the Big Sur River. So that, look for that sometime in the next 5 years. But it's very slow going. Let's see. Are commercial restaurant properties considered viable or risky right now? There's a long-term desired shift for outdoor eating spaces. It's a great question. One of the things that we have to do in my role is essentially recognize trends. And I graduated from Stanford in '98, which happened to be the year Amazon was founded. And I was going into an old school, good old boy network in shopping center development. And my peers were taking $100,000 signing bonuses and doing things that I totally didn't understand because I wasn't a computer guy. And I kind of thought, I wonder how this ends, and forecast that eventually maybe we would be on the outside looking in. And I think that that's actually happening in restaurants somewhat. In retail, there's retail development, which tends to include kind of the category of restaurants, unless it's part of a hotel, experiential retail, and then kind of a commodity-based retail. And I think that pre-COVID, there was a strong emphasis on, with respect to bricks and mortar destinations, a strong emphasis on experiential retail, which is basically bringing people to a specific point to interact and to capture an experience that can't be replicated online, or technically in someone's home. Well, obviously, the COVID situation, at least for me, has really accelerated our willingness to consider peer reviews. Look at what other people think about businesses or food, make a judgment as to whether or not you're willing to try something, and then also allow people to deliver stuff to your home and eat it in your PJs instead of getting done up and waiting for their server to come to the table. So I think there will be an acceleration in what has long been called omni-channel marketing. And that's a fancy way of saying having a fulfillment platform that relies on some type of tech, whether it's now obviously app-based fulfillment, so Instacart or Grubhub or DoorDash. Those are becoming, we're really the mainstay of restaurants that were able to stay open. That was where they were finding their customer. But I do think that I'm seeing it firsthand that there will be a continued return to having an outlet that's social, that's real time, and that's place-based. The experience of dining on Broadway is different than dining in the dunes of Marina or in a Salinas shopping center or downtown Carmel. And so I think a lot of us really do enjoy diversity in our experience, and also we find ourselves seeking out experiences that we incorporate into our own personal identity. I like this restaurant because of X, Y, and Z, and eventually, you develop habits, and that's how businesses tend to thrive is by hitting the repeat button. So, is restaurant industry risky? Yes. Do you need to evolve? Absolutely, in order to survive. But I don't think that that's anything new per se. I think it's more just a matter of an acceleration of what was ultimately going to happen anyway. And so the properties themselves are really hit and miss, dependent upon the type of the restaurant and the way that business is operating. It really very much depends. Some of them have, some restaurants have thrived, whereas others have really, really suffered during COVID. So.
All right, much appreciated, Patrick. I think that's all the questions we have in the chat box window. I more than welcome anyone to go and unmute yourself if you have any questions for our speaker. So anyone? It's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of our Q&A session there. Patrick, much appreciated. Great to have you here today. Thank you for coming back to our club today and sharing some of your experience, some of the work that you've done, and a little bit of insight into some of this. The restaurant property question that actually, as you saw, that came from me. I asked that because I owned a restaurant in downtown Salinas for a number of years. Recently changed careers as of a couple of years ago, and so I know the experience firsthand of being in front of that. So I really appreciate your perspective on that. But thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate the invitation. It's nice to see everyone.
Patrick, please come again. Don't you don't need an invitation. Just
Well, how about this? I'll come in person when we can actually see each other.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
We would love to have you here.
Yeah. Where just out of curiosity, where y'all meet now?
Can't tell you.
Good answer.
Jess will take care of that. Jess?
Yeah, right now we've been meeting for Zoom over the past year. Right now, we're trying to coordinate. We're trying to coordinate how we can start in-person meetings again. A lot of factors with that. Prior to that, we were meeting at the Black Bear Diner here in Seaside on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. So we're looking to see if we can start that up again. One thing that, as I've talked with our district governor, Joy Anderson, who's on the call today, and my colleague, Ms. Lisa Sani, one thing when we start meeting in person again, we're going to really do our best to try and make sure that some of our club members who are unable to make it in person, that they are able to stream or see the presentation. We want them to be involved as well. So it's going to be more of a hybrid model. A lot of logistics there, but I have faith that we'll be able to work it out.
I volunteer my house too
Oh.
for the meetings.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Gale. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording function now.